Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Grab a seat, get completely dialed in, because today we are jumping headfirst into what might just be the absolute highest stakes chase in the history of global sports. We're talking about the very limits of human endurance here. I mean, for decades, elite sports scientists have mapped out the maximum output a human body can actually sustain, right? And top-level football is arguably the world's most grueling, relentless sport. It requires 90 minutes of high-speed sprinting, cutting, and colliding. To reach the pinnacle of this sport is incredibly rare. To stay there, that's legendary. But what we're looking at today is completely uncharted territory. We are tracking a mathematical mountain, a record that historians and medical experts once universally believed was entirely unreachable by a mortal athlete. We are literally watching someone rewrite the history books right in front of our eyes.
961. Just let the sheer staggering scale of that number wash over you for a second. 961 official career goals. Think about what that actually represents in the real world. That's hundreds of different stadiums across the globe. It represents thousands of elite, world-class defenders whose single dedicated job was to stop one man, and they failed. It represents scoring on freezing nights in Moscow, in the blistering heat of the Middle East, and on rain-soaked pitches in Manchester. In the modern era of top-level football, this figure isn't just an outlier, it's a mathematical anomaly. It is a literal glitch in the matrix. We are watching a human being close in on the mythical 1,000-goal mountain. It's a number that requires a level of consistent, relentless, and almost unbelievable output that completely defies everything we know about athletic peaks and human biology.
And to understand the primal drive behind that massive number, we really have to look at the raw human emotion of the 2026 World Cup. Picture the cinematic scene here. The air in the stadium is thick with this palpable tension. The lights are blinding, over 60,000 screaming fans are on their feet, and the roar is just echoing across the concrete basin. Portugal has just completely dismantled Uzbekistan in a 5-0 thrashing. Cristiano Ronaldo has just scored twice, and what does he do? He doesn't just casually jog back to the center circle. No way. He finds the nearest television camera lens, stares straight down the barrel with this gaze of absolute fire, and screams a defiant, unmistakable roar, "I'm back, I'm back." You can literally feel the sheer, unadulterated willpower radiating through the screen.
So let's dig into that 2026 World Cup comeback.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the context. To truly appreciate that camera-shaking moment, we have to understand the immense, crushing pressure he was under just days prior. Earlier in the week, Portugal had stumbled to a labored 1-1 draw against DR Congo. The media critics were absolutely fierce. Pundits across the globe, driven by that 24/7 news cycle, were completely writing him off. They called him Portugal's problem, insisting his time was finally, truly over. He openly admitted it was a dark week. Imagine the psychology of that. Imagine the weight of the entire footballing world, billions of eyes telling you that your life's work is finished. For an athlete who has been at the very top for over 2 decades, that level of global scrutiny would absolutely break a normal player. But he used that exact criticism as highly combustible fuel. He stepped onto the pitch with an absolute refusal to be written off, demonstrating a mental fortitude that is just as historic as his physical output.
And this sheer improbability is exactly what commands such deep reverence from his peers. Take a look at the perspective of his former Manchester United teammate, Wayne Rooney. Rooney isn't just some pundit. He shared a dressing room with Ronaldo during their absolute physical primes. He knows intimately the grueling, bone-crushing toll that top-flight football takes on a body. He understands how ruthlessly fast the Premier League is and how unforgiving international tournaments are. So when Rooney points out that scoring 2 goals at the World Cup at the age of 41, outscoring the world's best 20-year-old phenoms on the biggest stage imaginable, completely defies logic, he means it. Yet knowing Ronaldo's historic obsession with being the absolute best, Rooney acknowledges it's the exact response you'd expect from a player who just refuses to surrender to time.
Then you bring in another legendary voice, Roy Keane. Keane's disbelief at the critics is palpable, and he highlights something fascinating that cuts right to the core of this whole explainer. Cristiano Ronaldo is a billionaire. Let that sink in for a moment. He has won virtually everything there is to win in the sport of football, outside of the World Cup itself. 5 Ballon d'Or awards. He has nothing left to prove, financially, statistically, or historically, to anyone. He could literally be relaxing on a super yacht right now, entirely insulated from criticism. Yet that primal hunger, that desperate, almost irrational desire to get into the penalty box and put the ball in the back of the net remains completely untouched. Keane points out the sheer absurdity of doubting a genius whose appetite for victory cannot be satisfied by money or past glory. And that unsatiable hunger bridges 2 completely different eras of the sport. Consider the sheer span of time between his very first World Cup goal, scored against Iran back in 2006 when he was a 21-year-old winger, and his historic goals against Uzbekistan in 2026 at age 41.
Those goals are 20 years apart. Think about how much the world has changed in 2 decades. In football terms, it's an eternity. The players who were literal toddlers when he scored that 2006 goal are now the elite defenders trying and failing to tackle him in 2026. He survived the evolution of lightweight boot technology, the introduction of VAR, radical shifts in tactical systems like tiki-taka and gegenpressing. Managers have changed, the speed of the game has doubled, sports science has totally transformed, yet the same name has remained permanently etched on the scoresheet.
Which brings us to the records that will never fall.
Let's pivot from the raw emotion of the World Cup to the cold, hard statistics for a minute. Because when you start layering these numbers together, his career begins to look less like an incredible hot streak and more like a total glitch in the system. We're talking about combinations of records that may literally never be repeated by a single human being ever again. 140 Champions League goals. And crucially, 67 of those came in the knockout stages. He didn't shrink under pressure. He became more dangerous when one single mistake could end a season. And then there's the 17 goals in a single Champions League campaign. To put that in perspective, scoring 10 goals in a European season makes you a global superstar. 17? That is absurd. 5 Champions League titles. The men's world record of 146 international goals. 14 European Championship goals across 6 different tournaments. This isn't just a great tournament run, guys. This is an entire era of dominance bundled into the biology of one man.
But if we're really talking about endurance, the number 23 is absolutely staggering. Most casual fans don't even know this one. That is the number of consecutive years he has scored for the Portuguese national team. 23 straight years. Let's thoroughly contextualize that. 23 years covers multiple United States presidencies, it covers major global historical events, economic crashes, and massive technological revolutions. In the football world, it covers entire generations of elite stars rising from youth academies, peaking, declining, and retiring to become television pundits. All while he just kept scoring. While most elite players are absolutely thrilled to have a prime window of 4 or 5 dominant seasons, he practically turned his entire adult life into one continuous unbreakable prime.
Actually, scratch that. Perhaps the most terrifying statistic of all is 494. That's the number of goals he has scored strictly after turning 30 years old. In traditional football biology, turning 30 is the beginning of the end. It's when a player's VO2 max drops, when the fast-twitch muscle fibers start to degrade, when recovery time doubles, and when elite strikers are usually moved to the bench or sold to lower-tier leagues. But he's somehow completely inverted the biological clock. He shattered the previous record to become the highest-scoring over-30 player in football history. And based on current projections, he's poised to become the first player ever to hit 500 goals scored exclusively in their 30s and 40s. He didn't just fight Father Time, he completely rewrote his rules.
Let's look at the historical context to really frame this.
To truly understand the magnitude of what we're seeing, we have to zoom out and look at the legendary goal machines of the past. Back in the 1950s, you had Ferenc Puskás, football's first recognized goal machine, ending his glorious career with 725 goals. Then came Pelé in the 1970s. Pelé was a myth, an absolute legend, surpassing Puskás to finish with 762 official goals. For decades, the footballing world universally accepted that Pelé's record was the absolute permanent ceiling of human capability. It stood essentially untouched for over 40 years. Why? Because to break it required a theoretically impossible, perfectly durable athlete who never suffered a severe, career-ending injury and never faced a sharp late-career decline. That player simply didn't seem to exist, until Ronaldo, alongside Messi, arrived and completely demolished what we thought was humanly possible.
Okay, let's dive into this, the mathematical reality.
Let's look at the sheer, terrifying logic of the 1,000-goal mountain. What does it actually take, mathematically speaking, to score 1,000 professional goals? Well, the math breaks down like this. In top-flight football, scoring 30 goals across all competitions is the gold standard for a genuinely world-class season. Very few elite strikers manage to do it for more than 3 years in a row before brutal injuries, tactical shifts, global pandemics, or simple athletic fatigue catch up to them. But if you wanted to reach 1,000 goals, a player starting their professional career at age 18 would have to score 30 goals every single season for 33 consecutive seasons. They wouldn't reach their 1,000th goal until they were 51 years old. That is the alien, almost incomprehensible mathematical reality of this chase.
So, can the next generation catch him? Which brings us to the central question of this explainer. If Ronaldo does cross that 1,000 goal threshold, projected potentially for late 2026 or early 2027, can anyone active today actually catch him? Outside of Messi, Robert Lewandowski is the closest active player, but he's still hundreds of goals away. At his current already brilliant pace, Lewandowski would need to maintain that exact production for 9 more years, until he is 46 years old. Time is simply running out for him. But what about the explosive youth? Kylian Mbappe and Erling Haaland have incredible numbers, tracking closely with Ronaldo's early career. But the crushing weight of the math is just unavoidable. To reach 1,000, they would need to score 50 to 60 goals a year for over 12 additional seasons. 12 continuous years of absolute perfection without a single serious injury or off-season slump.
And here is exactly why fighting off biology is so agonizingly hard. The reality of modern sports science dictates that a normal athletic peak lasts roughly 4 to 5 years. That's the incredibly small window when a player is at their absolute physical maximum before the wear and tear begins. The modern game is defined by high-intensity pressing, non-stop sprinting, and brutal schedules exceeding 60 games a year. The risk of ACL tears, hamstring ruptures, and severe muscle degradation is higher than ever. To catch a 1,000 goal record, a player like Mbappe or Haaland doesn't just have to be incredibly talented, they have to avoid major injuries entirely. They have to dodge the natural athletic decline every human faces. They must maintain a superhuman output of 50-plus goals for well over a decade against the most highly trained, tactically advanced defenders in history. They literally have to defeat biology itself.
Which leaves us with this final provocative thought. When we look at all the shimmering trophies, the 140 Champions League goals, the 6 different World Cups, is his greatest record actually none of those individual stats? Is his ultimate achievement simply his longevity? It really seems Ronaldo's true glitch wasn't just his lethal skill inside the penalty box. It was his unprecedented ability to outlast time itself, to survive the physical and tactical evolution of the game, generation after generation, and just keep scoring when every biological and mathematical law said he should stop. What do you guys think? Can anyone ever match that level of endurance? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and as always, keep questioning the impossible.